Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Daniel Palmer with a company called Engine. Here today to present some of the work that we've done with Feastables. We were originally going to have Beth Pittman with us from Feastables, but she had a last-minute emergency, so she wasn't able to make it. But I've got Alexis here with me today from Feastables as we kind of talk about what we've done and the work we've had here. So that being said, so the main agenda is we're going to talk a little bit about Feastables' story, where they came from, what their challenges were faced, and how they ended up coming to hire us at Engine to help them scale and grow and enter into the huge field of CPG and go against these big behemoths. And to get started.
Hi, Databricks. I was so looking forward to connecting with all of you in San Francisco this week, but unfortunately I've had an emergency that's pulled me away. I'm Beth Pittman, and I'm the Global SVP of Strategy and Commercial at Feastables, a high-quality, ethically sourced chocolate snacking company founded by the #1 YouTuber and the most watched person on the planet, Mr. Beast. If you haven't heard of him, go and Google him. Feastables was originally launched in 2022, and we later relaunched a new and improved brand identity and consumer preferred formulation in 2024. We had cleaned out all of the old product of the market, and we were launching big with the #1 retailer on the planet, Walmart. We had a fast follow in retailers like 7-Eleven, Target, Kroger, and Albertsons. Jimmy has accredited much of his success to being data-driven. And we here at Feastables do the same. We were entering the retail market with major expansion plans and needed visibility to pinpoint issues and quickly pivot for success. We not only needed visibility, but we needed the ability to query large amounts of disparate data to be able to perform complex analyses, and again, most importantly, recommend action for change quickly. I was asked to hire a team of data scientists, data analysts, data architects, and build a data lake. And from my past experience, I knew that for a startup, that was going to be way too expensive and going to take, quite frankly, way too long. The other thing I knew, however, with third party, is that most third parties are really good at one of the three things that you need. You have different companies that are great at data architecture, others that are really great at visualization, and then others that are great at data science. It's really rare that you find all three in one. So when we found Engine, we knew we had found a unicorn. They had proven success in this space, in all three spaces, and in CPG. So from signing on the dotted line, within 4 months, we had a data lake, we had retailer data from disparate retailer data sources, syndicated data, and our shipment and financial data all in one place. We were actually able to see our entire business and understand the full picture. We were able to take a look at actuals, but then see in one spot how they informed our forecast. We, within a couple of months, built together with Engine a custom planning tool where we were able to house all of that and then begin to use AI to smartly inform our forecasts as we built a history. We also looked at sales gaps and out-of-stock issues together that actually led to major space gains in some really big retailers. And we did A/B testing on different display assets that actually allowed us to gain back an incremental asset that we had once lost. Daniel and Alexis are going to share more of the details, but I just wanted to express my gratitude for our strategic partnership with both Engine and Databricks. I wanted to thank you personally for your time and your understanding in my absence. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the conference, and let's definitely connect online.
Yeah, so obviously Beth really gutted not to be able to talk to you guys today, but she sent me. I'm Alexis Bernal. I'm her lead data analyst, reporting directly to MB. Brought on a little less than a year ago, even though it feels like forever, to really kind of help with her vision and partner with these guys at Engine to really, get our data ducks in a row, get our data sources correct, and really do something with it. To take a step back, Feastables launched in 2022 by Jimmy Donaldson, aka Mr. Beast, If you don't know who Mr. Beast is, I encourage you to Google him. If not, if you have children, nieces, or you're like me who has a mother who's on YouTube 24 hours a day, ask them. More likely than not, they know who Mr. Beast is. It says here he has 386 million subscribers, most on the YouTube platform. About a week and a half ago, he passed over 400 million. So it's a huge audience, huge subscriber amount. And you think with the amount of success that he's had, that he'd be like, okay, I don't really want to do much. But no, that's not Jimmy. Jimmy's got a lot of ideas, a lot of crazy ideas. If you see his videos, a lot of crazy ideas. But one of them being creating a CPG company, Feastables, right? And he wanted to create Feastables, but also didn't want to do it in just like an influencer way, right? He wanted to be very disruptive. He wanted to, create a CPG company, but with a twist. The twist being, being 100% ethically sourced, not just, wanting to create profit, but wanting to create change. And as of today, 100% of our products are 100% ethically sourced. We're fair trade certified, kosher, and it's really a huge thing in our huge mission that we have in all of the work that we do. And having said that, that's a huge reason why we are in like 14 plus countries. For a brand that came out in 2022, rebranded in 2024, to be in that many countries is just like astronomical. And it's been a huge success of him and the Feastables team. What's the next slide? So like I said, data is a big thing for Jimmy. You would think an influencer doesn't really know about data, but Jimmy's a huge data nerd. Daniel has like hundreds of stories about him, and then being at the engine office and just wanting to know the information, really getting down to the details. And having that information really helped us launch in 2022, and then helped us rebrand and relaunch in 2024. It's helped us really find these inefficiencies in our supply chain. There was a time where we weren't on shelves, but we had sold. We were like, we don't know what was going on because we didn't have the data. That's where Engine came in, really. We didn't know how our supply chain was doing. There was a lot of information that we didn't know that we should know. Having said that, going back, Daniel.
Oh, keep jumping ahead on you.
That's all right. Data. Talking about data. We also didn't know how we were doing in like the field, like compared to competitors. We knew internally we were being successful, but how did that look like compared to the top 10 manufacturers? And that's really where data came in. That's really where where we were able to partner with Engine, get that data source in a centralized place, so we can then know okay, we're doing X amount in Walmart, we're doing X amount in the U.S. And that's really helped fuel our growth, fuel our expansion, and why you see us in more than 14 countries and all major retailers. And then we just continue to expand and continue to grow. And then last slide before I hand it over to Daniel. A huge thing that you might have heard in Mary Beth's video is, as we grow, do we build our data architecture, our data science, our data analysts in-house? Do we take on that challenge of hiring a bunch of people, getting a project plan, taking on this 1 to 2 year project, or do we outsource it? Do we partner with an excellent partner like Engine? Do we have them kind of guide us and tackle these challenges that you see at the bottom and help us just focus on the top goals? With them partnering with us and having to tackle on the data engineering aspect, the data architecture aspect, we have our internal teams focused on the insights that come with the data, that focused on not having to worry about where do I get the data, because it's all centralized, and Engine has helped us tremendously in that. And so really excited for what Daniel has to say, some of the projects that we have in store and that we have done. And just tremendous shout outs like Engine, because they've made my life a lot easier as well.
Thanks. Yeah, so as Alexis is saying, as Mary Beth was saying, Feastables as a company had a really hard challenge where they knew they were growing, but they were still a small company. They planned to be multi-billion dollars, but they weren't there yet. And so they were trying to figure out, how do we manage the business we have today and be prepared for scaling to the growth that we know we're going to have? Mary Beth herself, she came from Coca-Cola and had built out the data science team there, and that had all this legacy tech and legacy stack and all these different data sources all over the place. And so she knew how big of a lift it would be to actually do that and to build it from scratch, especially with a boss like Jimmy, Mr. Beast, who's planning on being as big as he can imagine. Like, he expects to take over the world in every single business aspect. And so she had to be prepared for that. And so when she came to us, that's exactly where we help with Databricks, of having that platform of being able to deploy quickly, get everything into place, but then be able to scale as their business scales. And so watching them double every 6 to 9 months and being able to manage that, and their staffing up and be able to get new employees in, that's been the big benefit of what we've helped them set up, and with having our products built on Databricks allows us to do is to scale everything with them. As a company, this is how we see what we do. This is the journey to making decisions, to getting to insights, to getting to actions. Is the first, you have the data architecture or infrastructure layer. You've got to collect data, you've got to get it in a place, and then from there you're visualizing it, you're reviewing it, you're doing descriptive analytics. What happened where and when did it happen? And then you can start getting into the fun data science places where you're actually making recommendations and driving those insights that change decisions. And as a company, we build our business from that structure. We help everybody from small companies who are now much bigger to Coca-Cola and Dr. Pepper and Unilever and Reckitt and Johnson & Johnson. I don't know, Stephanie, those are big lists, all the big boys. And we help them as well doing this same sort of work, but the goal is to help them through this transition. The path to action always starts with collecting data and doing descriptive analytics. What happened, where, and when did it happen? So this is great BI tools. This is Tableau, this is Power BI, this is Domo, whatever tool works out the best for that situation to visualize those data. There's a lot of really great AI-powered tools on top of that can help with that layer. Databricks Genie, for example, is really clean and easy to deploy and get it out there, where now you can start using natural language to visualize your descriptive historical data. But we don't want to just stop there. We got to go from not just the news, but we're trying to transition into, well, why did it happen? So this is where you start getting into predictive models. This is where you're using regression models and LSTMs and all these different AI algorithms that are out there to try to analyze why did it happen? What were the causals? What were the variables that drove that impact? And then transition to the last step, which is really the end goal from a business solution standpoint, is to get to prescriptions. Recommendations of what should I do? What should my price be? What should my assortment be? Should I be expanding into this segment of the industry? Recently, they just launched the peanut butter cups. And that was an industry of very targeted, okay, I've got my chocolate bars. Do I go after this segment of candy? Do I go after chips? And after being able to collect all the data they did, doing the analysis, they got to that prescriptive of what's the next segment they're going to go after. And he's got plenty of plans of a whole lot more products coming out that I'm scared to say because he's getting in trouble sometimes. But they're aggressively trying to get to that prescriptive step. Where's the next thing should I go do? This slide, it's been similar slides to this. You've probably seen all over the place. This is that base layer infrastructure that you have to put into place. You get all these different data sources from all over the place. When Alexis first started, Alexis, will you tell us about how you were collecting all the data to just report to Jimmy on what was happening in his business?
Yeah, no, it was crazy. It was a bunch of manual Excels. We had to ask our brokers hey, how are we doing here? How are we doing here? And just having to collect that so manually, was just a headache. And just to answer simple questions Jimmy would be well, how am I doing at Walmart? Well, let me go ask this and this person to get the data. It was just such a headache. Because we didn't have this infrastructure. We didn't have this layer just yet.
Yeah. And so pulling in all those different data sources and walking them through your bronze, silver, gold layers to get that data harmonized in such a way so that you can report everything out to the right person at the right time and the right cadence is just fundamental to getting to those more fun steps where we can get to the prescriptive analytics and make those actual recommendations that we're trying to get to. So, for example, here's a Tableau report that Alexis built himself that's pulling in Walmart and Target and Amazon and Kroger, and I'm sure I'm missing a few in there.
Yeah, there's a few in there. Shopify, a couple of other small retailers.
And it's pulling in all the different data sources all into one place, and this way leadership can step right in And in this case with Jimmy, because he cares and gets so into the weeds of the data, he jumps right in, starts drilling through the data, and he's looking at, okay, what's my business doing at Kroger today versus Walmart, and reviewing it and analyzing it. A story to tell about him to just kind of show like that speed of insights. A year ago when we first got the business with Feastables, we had, on the day that we had gained access from Walmart to all of their data and had it pulled in, we gained access, it was like 3 p.m., we had it all done, loaded in, and at 6 p.m., Jimmy, Mr. Beast, just happened to be in town, and so he ran by our office, and we were like, hey, we just got the data. He was like, oh, awesome, I'm in town. And so he actually comes over to our office, and he was there until about 2 a.m., just asking questions, wanting to see, like, oh, show me this, let me see how this is happening, what's going on in Texas, what's going on in Idaho, and he's just going through all of it and just wants to slice and dice it as much as he can. And so as an organization, to have their leader be so data focused, everything they do has to come back and have to be able to access it, have to be able to show in the raw data why they're doing what they're doing, what's happening where. And that first day was actually pretty fun. I think I'm gonna jump ahead just real quick. Yeah, so this tweet by him, that was actually the day after that first day, he tweets this out about all these stores along the US-Mexico border. All of his out-of-stock issues was because they had so many customers were going to those border stores and buying all the Feastable bars they could and then going across the border and reselling it into Mexico. And so as soon as he saw that, he messaged out, hey guys, give me time, let me get the supply fixed out so that we can then expand and go into the next country. And so it made it very, very obvious for him to know, I need to go international. Because it was so clear once we got that data, could drill through it, where their business problems were. Stepping back, so again, going into the different tools, like once you have that data structured, then you can start doing and adding all the different tools to it. Your natural language queries, that's your chat bots. That's Data Genie so that you can help get in there and do descriptive analytics better. But as a company at Engine, like I said, our goal is to help our clients get beyond just descriptive analytics and get to prescriptive and predictive analytics. And so that's where what we call our proactive intelligence suite. So this is A/B measurement. So think about if I've got 50 stores I did an experiment in, what was the impact? What's the lift on those 50 stores versus the control stores where you didn't do anything? Media measurement's the same idea. What's my ROAS? What's the actual impact? And this is modeling the why did it happen? What was the cause of the change in sales? And then a product that we call Auto Insights that I'll show a little bit more about it. And this, we've built out a massive decision tree model that's drilling through the DSR data, demand signal repository data. So this is coming from retailer POS data. And explaining why did sales change. So it's drilling through, finding all the points where at this store, this item, this day, my sales started to drop, and then drilling through all the possible reasons and feeding that back with the reason why. Once you get through predictive analytics, then the goal is to get to that prescriptive, what should I go do? And that's where we have our forecasting tool and our assortment and clustering tool and planogram automation. So this is actually generating recommendations. From a data science standpoint, I'm not quite sure of the audience, but from a nerdy standpoint, natural language queries, that's your LLMs, that's your chatbots, that's just translating a question to a SQL statement to get your data out in the format that makes sense and how you're asking it. Proactive intelligence, that's your regression models, that's your linear regressions, that's your LSTMs, that's which variables are driving sales up or down. And then scenario simulation, this is constraint optimization models. So subject to, I've got a $100,000 marketing budget, how do I allocate that money out? Subject to, I've got 48 inches on the shelf. What's the best combination of items and facings to fit on that shelf in order to maximize sales? And so using the right type of model for the right question gets you much better results. And a lot of companies, especially IT, they get caught up and they got a tool that they think is really, really good and they just want to use it everywhere. But LLMs, for example, are not good at constraint optimization. That's just not what you're ever going to use them for. And so really understanding which tool is the right one for the right job is the expertise that we bring for our clients, is to help them set up what they need to get to their business solutions, to get to their business recommendations. Again, a few use cases, a few case studies here of what we've been able to drive with Feastables is there within the first 4 months, we were able to stand up a full demand planning suite for them, have everything modeled out, and have all the actual data coming in from the different sources, feeding into one place so their planning team can be able to plot out and plan what's going ahead. With a company that's growing as fast as Feastables, this is a really, really hard challenge. Again, Mary Beth, who led this, she came from Coca-Cola. That's 100 some odd years of historical sales. That's so much tribal knowledge to be able to manage, okay, what are my sales going to be? With Feastables, there's no history. There was no tribal knowledge. Everything was very, very rapid. As soon as 7-Eleven came on board, it changed the dynamic. It changed how Walmart was selling. It changed how Kroger was selling. And so they had to very, very quickly be on top of all those changes because of how quickly the brand was getting distributed out. And then you get into the fun things, just when he talks about Feastables on his videos, and you get 200 million people to hear about it and to go into Walmart, and you can see that sales jump occur right as he's talking about it. And then that middle use case was the one that I was telling you about, of how quickly, once he finally had all that data in a place that he could query it and get the answers he was looking to, how quickly he could figure out his out-of-stock problem wasn't a nationwide problem. It was just a problem along the US-Mexico border. And so then he could manage shipments and manage inventory levels correctly so as to manage that and then plan for the future of where he's going to go. And then this last case study is using our A/B measurement tool, where they last summer had gotten extra locations of their products in the stores in what's called the Trending Now set that was in the front of the grocery stores. And they weren't sure how valuable that was because their products were already in other places in the store. And so running those stores through our A/B analysis, we were able to identify that when they got that extra space in there, it was worth a 30% lift in sales. It was a huge gain, big driver of performance, all marginal sales. And the retailer wasn't really paying much attention to it and just thought, oh, this is excess space. And so they gained that space in, I want to say, June. And then in November, the retailer was like, oh, it's not worth it anymore. It's not really working. And they wanted to pull it out. And so Feastables, because of the tools they had from us, were able to say, no, this is how much it's worth. This is what it's going to generate in sales. And if you pull it out, sales will drop by this much. And they're not going to transfer someplace else. And sure enough, they pulled it out in November. The sales immediately went right down to what was predicted to go down. And so in March, they were like, oh yeah, you were right, we're gonna put it back. And so now it's going back into all stores in that location again and actually getting expanded out from where it was before. And so it's an example of staying on top of the business, being able to identify what those drivers are. They knew this extra location was worth this much marginal benefit in sales. Not just on average it sold this much, but marginally it was driving this much of their business. And so that was a big, big win for them as a company, is to gain that space back and to prove to the retailer. A big part of that, too, is also prove to the retailer that they know their business. They're not just some young company who's saying take everything everywhere. They could come in and very specifically say, we know it's worth this much in these stores. This is why you want it to be there. And that builds so much trust with their retail partners to be able to come in with that level of analytics. Just kind of as up front, you saw kind of their timeline of growth. This is kind of showing their timeline of completion of like what we're able to deliver from when they started with that business problem. Within 4 months, had everything spun up, stood out, all the data pulling in, and the reports being generated so they can actually see their business. And then that gave them that single source of truth. And then that is what allowed to then, that's that foundation building block in order to build out those forecasting tools and the return on investment tools, and then that leads into those prescription recommendations of what should they do where. Where should the Trending Now set be in the stores? What items should they be expanding into? What categories should they go compete for? Part of one thing that I kind of want to spend a little bit of time to show off is a new product that we're rolling out to our clients that we call the Auto Insights Engine, AI engine, pun totally intended, is what we've built out is this basically digital analyst bot that drills through all the sales data that it has access to. And what it's looking for is all the different change points. So if sales were trending up and then all of a sudden they go flat, that's a change in behavior. If you were shipping products into a store once a week and then all of a sudden you're now shipping it in 3 times a week, that's a change in that signal's behavior. And so we identify every store item day where one of those metrics have changed in behavior, and then we have a decision tree bot that's looking at all those different change points and trying to estimate, well, if my sales changed, what is the most likely driver of that change? And so in this case, I forget what this exact question was that was asked. It was something like, what's my biggest decrease in sales? And because every store item day is tagged with, am I statistically up, flat, or down in sales? And then it's tagged with what's the most likely thing driving it. It makes the LLM chatbots able to answer questions that they can't do on their own because the answers are already pre-fed in that raw data set. So now it doesn't have to do the deductive logic. We have our causal engine over here doing all that logic. So now you just query, well, what's driving sales down? In this case, it's where shipments are down. So this bottom graph down there, you can see for whatever reason, they just stopped shipping this product into the store for a couple weeks, and sure enough, it aligns with where the sales dropped. And so again, our goal is to get clients all the way through that end, to get to that prescriptive analytics state where it's making recommendations. And this is part of that journey of helping users who may not understand a full decision tree, may not understand regression models, but what they do need to know is, why are my sales down? That's the answer they're trying to get to. Most of the time, it's a human analyst just clicking and drilling. And most visual tools, you can group by where, you can group by when, you can group by what. And then now with this Auto Insights engine running, you can now group the data by why. So let me group on where my sales are down because I ran out of stock, because of a price change, because a competitor changed price. And what's really exciting for us about this tool that we've built is because we're teaching it individual nodes at a time, like individual decisions at a time, we can bring in other data sources. So one of our clients, not Feastables, but one of our clients, we did this, ran it on their data set, and it was only explaining about 50, 60% of the change in sales, and we're showing them the results, and we weren't very happy with it, and they're like, oh, it's because you don't have pollen data. Most of our items are like allergy items. And so once we realized that, we then taught it how to go check to see, hey, has pollen count changed? So it sees like my sales went up. Well, I didn't change my price, I didn't change my shipments, I didn't change my on-hands, didn't change shelf capacity, but what did change was pollen count. And it picked up on that and was able to explain that, and that became the reason why. It was like, oh, we see an increase in pollen happened at the same time that the increase in sales occurred. Another thing that we've been testing with it, and again, that's just, we basically, the same way you teach a human analyst, when you see this, go look over here to see if that might be the reason why. We're doing that for our digital analyst and letting it work through all those different nodes to figure out what's the most likely reason why. One of the things that we've been experimenting with it now is using a different AI agent that knows how to go check the news. And so we're saying, hey, here's a list of zip codes where sales are down. Is there anything in the news that might explain it? But when we tested it, it immediately came back with LA wildfires. Immediately came back with flooding in Atlanta or a snowstorm in the Midwest. And like, it was amazing how well it picked that up. And so that's one thing that we're continuing to experiment and add to it, is teaching it more and more reasons why sales might be down and how to go check and validate against that. Thank you guys so much for listening to us. Thank you, that's all I got.